How would you feel if we shut down tomorrow?
I started a company with my boyfriend and we didn't bother with any paperwork because it was all based on love and trust.
It's harder to divorce your co-founder than your wife or your husband. Equity is like toothpaste. Once you squeeze it out of the tube, you can't get it back in.
It just looks like four monkeys trying football. Lots of action and nothing's getting done. Just a lie that founders tell a lot. And if I only had this much more money, it's like those drug addicts. This is my last drag and then I'll stop. It's exactly like that. You might only have a handshake deal, maybe in most cases, with your mom and nobody else.
How would you feel if we shut down tomorrow?
Man, you're just a masterful.
Today, we're talking about co-founder confessions, love, lies, and betrayal. I gotta tell you, Lloyd, sometimes the startup world feels like a Shakespearean tragedy.
I know. You know what? I was reading this book by Noam Wasserman, popular Harvard professor. He had this great book called Founder's Dilemma. In that he writes, founder conflicts, especially in the early stages, leads to 65% of all startup failures. So there's something to be said about that, right? I mean, just like couples fall apart, but if there's constant fighting just before you're going to get off, it's bound to fail. It's destined to fail. Like you see some marriages, like they're before they even get married, you're like, why the hell did you get married? So for today's episode, what we said was we'll poll our audience, our friends, our community, and get some of the juiciest co-founder horror stories from them and break it down.
Yeah, I mean, I would add to that and say it's harder to divorce your co-founder than your wife or your husband.
Both are equally painful, and I think it's a function of how much more time you spend with the other, and it gets more and more painful over time. So Melissa, let's read some of these DMs and play couples therapist then.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. So all of these are anonymized, by the way, for our listeners. We're gonna put some fake names to them, though, just to add some juiciness.
You know what? Our friends who sent us these will know exactly who we're talking about. But let's see what we've got here. So our first one comes from, let's call her Testy Tina or Trusty Tina. I started a company with my boyfriend and we didn't bother with any paperwork because it was all based on love and trust. But now I'm starting to worry that maybe, just maybe, I've made a huge mistake. What do you think I should do?
So I want to take this one because my co-founder is also my life partner and my husband, my now husband. This is one that I've heard a few times because when I post about starting a company with my husband, people send me stuff like this too. I would say like it doesn't matter who your co-founder is, like brother, mother, relative, husband, wife. You gotta treat them like any other co-founder. Like paper everything. And especially if you are going to have investors, even if you don't have investors today, like investors are going to look at you not having a shareholders agreement, like a proper shareholders agreement, as a red flag. Nobody is going to invest in you if you don't have a proper shareholders agreement. Like your lawyer should be telling you this. And it's like for me, like I'm a believer of prenups, right? Yeah. You need to know the terms of your exit and have that out of sight, out of mind before you get into a partnership. And everything should be treated as if this person's a stranger, because the more you get into it, the harder that conversation is going to be, right? Once you have a product, once you have revenue, then you're going to get into the nitty gritty of like who should get what. And you need to do that from day one. So Tina, if you have not done that, and if you're listening, you need to do it pronto. Like put this podcast on pause and go do it right now. What do you think?
Definitely. I agree 100%. A lot of people view like, oh, it's something we did out of friendship, out of love, and let's just launch this thing and then see where it goes and do the paperwork. But you see what happened with Whitney Wolf and the whole sort of Tinder blow up, that they were saying she wasn't a co-founder, but she felt like she was, and they invited her to the team and she drove the early traction, and then they booted her out with anything and it was a lawsuit. Why have all that hassle? Now, nonetheless, that pain drove her to start Bumble, and she built an iconic company that is now, I think, more popular than Tinder in many cases. But why go through that pain, right? The longer you wait, the more painful it becomes with anything. The one thing you need to look at yourself, I know you started this company because you had a good camaraderie, whatever, love, relationship, friendship. But when you start a company, it's not about the two of you, right? It is about your relationship with the customers and the employees and your shareholders. Any decision you do should come from a place of, am I doing right by my customers? Am I doing right by my employees? And am I I doing right by my shareholders? It's not about your love and your personal relationship and what's happening there.
Yeah, there's definitely no such thing as a handshake deal. And I think there is. It's easier when you don't have a product and you don't have revenue. But once you have revenue, everything gets complicated.
You might only have a handshake deal, maybe in most cases, with your mom and nobody else.
But just get it out of the way. Right? Like, it's not a big deal. Everybody does it. If the other side's offended, it's a bit of a red flag.
It is a big red flag if the other person is offended, because you're starting a business. I think the number one thing comes from alignment of vision, mission, values, purpose, and values are key. How are we going to behave? If two people are at loggerheads over this thing to start with, even papering it, how is that going to impact as you add 2-3 more people? Doing right by the customers, employees, shareholders should be your number one prerogative, and not this like my love affair on the side.
Well, and that's a good point. Like, don't let anyone guilt you into not doing it. It's just business. Remove your emotions.
It's just business. Don't let anyone guilt you into doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Ever.
Okay, should we move on to our next one?
Yeah, let's do it.
This is kind of fun. My co-founder and I never bothered with a shareholders agreement. And now that our startup is taking off, we can't agree on an equity split. How do you suggest approaching this?
You know what? I had another friend send me this. My co-founder thinks he deserves a bigger piece of the pie than me. How do we settle this equity and compensation dispute without tearing each other apart?
Man, this is almost exactly what we were talking about on the previous DM, right? But now if your business has already taken off, what do? That's a tough conversation.
You've had this situation before, right? You had a co-founder for a long time before your husband, who's your co-founder. But let's walk through what you did wrong in your previous startup and what you did right.
Yeah. In my previous 2 startups, I had the same co-founder, and then I learned a bunch of stuff, and eWebinar was my third, and I founded it with my
How
husband,
did you find that first co-founder, and what was the split?
So he was my contractor for a year and a half before.
Remote?
We were both living in Vancouver, but he was my contractor. He had multiple projects. I was one of his clients, but it got to the point where I felt like his attention was way too diverted, and he wasn't giving me a product to sell, and then I was burning my own money waiting for that product, and it just didn't make any sense. So I gave him an ultimatum after a year and a half of not having a product to sell, trying to do different things. And I was just like, you know what? Either you give up all your clients and we work on this together as co-founders, or we have to end this relationship because I'm burning all of my savings while waiting for you. And actually, this is quite common, right? With business founders that don't have CTO co-founders, they go in contract, but the contractor is working on 10 things and they are now waiting for that thing to sell. So that was me.
Or not so different than one co-founder goes full-time and the other is part-time.
It's exactly like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we ended up splitting the company. And mind you, I was like late 20s. I didn't know what I was doing.
Equal split, 50-50.
Yeah. So I didn't realize what it took to start a company. I didn't realize that a product person or a CTO builds the product, whereas a CEO over time builds the business. And the business is not just the product. The product is a subset of the entire business. So having learned that the hard way and having learned how much more I had to put into the business, and let's break it down, right? And I would love to hear your perspective, right? Like, I made the financial investment. Like, he always got paid, even though not market value, but he always got paid. I was a person that put my name on every loan, every single business loan. I didn't take a salary for the first 4 years. I was in huge debt when we had to borrow money. It was from my parents. And I was the one that went to get government grants as well. I came up with the product idea, all the pivots, all the customers. I went to all the conferences, and also meeting customers before product market fit in order to change the product was also me. So that's what I mean by the business, right? And after when we were revenue generating, I was the person that closed every single deal, made every single partnership and every product decision such that the product could get into the hands of customers to generate revenue. And then I recruited every single person. So that's what I mean by the business. And not saying the product's not important. I'm just saying there's much more to the business than just building the product. What do you think?
I agree 100%. So with David, who's your husband also, which is a tricky one, how did you split equity?
So David came into the company a year after I started the company. So I hired a dev shop to be my CTO because I was so sick of not knowing how to manage engineers that I came into my third startup not wanting to manage any engineer. So I started the company, hired a dev shop for them to build my version 1, always with the intention that I would only focus on the business and someone else would focus on the product. It didn't work out. David started helping out a year in. And then as soon as David started helping out, the product started working. And I knew as soon as the product started working that I needed him to be my co-founder CTO. So just to give some background, David is a 20-year product guy, CTO for other companies. He was a fractional CTO at the time when he came into my company. And I just had a super honest conversation with him, as I would with any friend or, any engineer, right, that was working with me at the time. And I basically said, listen, we're a year into the company. I would love for you to be my CTO. Here are the things that I believe I'm going to do for the business. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. Here are the things that I think you're going to do for the business. What is the equity split that you're going to need for you to feel fully invested, like you're my co-founder, that we can do this together, like you feel like is fair? And he gave me a number. I upped it a little bit and it never came up again. And then we just papered it. So it was a super honest, very quick conversation. But I think I was in a good position because we were together at that point for 7 years. So he was actually with me for the entirety of my last startup. So he saw me executing, right? He also saw the resentment that I had when I was in a position where I felt like my other co-founder wasn't executing as an equal partner. So I was lucky in that sense. But at the end of the day, like the only way you can have that conversation is honesty.
I completely agree. I also love that advice of the CEO's job is to build the business. The CTO's job is to build the product. And you may be clouded with this decision, right? And so there are like 10 things or so a founding team needs to do early days through scale in building a company. Number one is vision, idea, right? And you may take these 10 things if you want and divide it by assign equal points. Like who's going to drive the vision, whose idea it is, who's going to keep driving the vision, you give it 10 points. Who's going to sell? Because honestly, it's easier to build product with no code, low code, bro code, and generative AI, chat GPT. What's harder is getting customers and building an audience. Who's going to sell? Who's going to market it? Which is different. Marketing is a different skill set than selling it. And who has that knowledge of sales and marketing? Because you got to, in the early days, be that jack of all trades and even manage. And who's going to build the product, develop the product, or oversee the development of the product? But separate to that is product management. Now, here's where people get confused. Building the product is two things. It's product managing and it's product development. Not every product developer is a good product manager. What is a product manager's job? Talking to customers, figuring out the pain points, prioritizing them, turning them into wireframes or just sketches and providing it to the devs. Then when the devs build that first version, taking it back to the team, the customer team, the beta team, and getting feedback and going through those iterations. You need somebody to product manage it. A developer won't do that. They'll burn out if they try to do, unless they're so damn good at their job that they can do both product management and product development. I've never seen that work. Then you gotta recruit, culture, HR, all of that stuff. Operations, because inadvertently, you got to do things, right? Customer success, make the customers happy, make sure everything is functioning. Finance is a key thing. You might be able to get by outsourcing it, but if you have that internal knowledge, maybe one of the founders will manage finance, right? Which is your revenue recognition, which is your bookkeeping, which is all the financials. Then raising funding, fundraising, maybe it's investors, maybe it's government grants, like somebody's going and doing all of this. And maybe one of the founders puts a little bit of investment in the company. And then you got to ask yourself, if this founder leaves, will it kill the traction and growth of my company? And if this founder leaves, will it stall my product development? And I think even if you want to be as analytical as possible, score that, divide it by 10. It's rare that two people will come 50-50. In some cases, they do. Most cases, one will come out on top.
I mean, I want to add to what I just said. I don't want it to come off as like, I don't respect my co-founder and I don't appreciate all the work that, he needs to build in the product. I do.
Yeah.
Right. And I know that that's not a skill set that I have. Right. I know that he is super smart. He has to build to scale. He's had 20 plus years of experience. Otherwise, he would not be able to do this. Right. All I'm saying is it's never 50-50. It could be 55-45, right? Like 51-49. But I don't believe in 50-50 splits. And maybe in some very rare cases, but at least for me, like all the things that I talked about and all the things you're talking about, like I'm not even getting into like the amount of work it takes to hire as a bootstrap company, to market,
Exactly.
to sell, right? To create partnerships, right? To start podcasts like these ones, right? To write content every single day, right? To be front facing. So I really do respect everything that my co-founder does, but I don't believe that it's 50-50. And that's a really, really important conversation to have, because if you don't have that, if you don't score it, you're just going to feel resentful, right? How many friends do we have that have come to us and said, I wish I didn't do it this way, or I feel like I'm not getting enough. And then they're demotivated to work as hard as they could because they feel like they're not getting as much.
100%. I agree. Now, all that said, I mean, I think accelerators like YC, they recommend equal or close to equal split. And I get there are reasons for it in the early days, maybe if each founder fills the other person's gaps. But I think you got to keep in mind this point system of who's doing what, because that'll also help you downstream. The one thing I also do recommend is have vesting for each of the founders, which we didn't talk about.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how you split your equity. The worst is you split the equity in any which way, but this founder leaves in 6 months.
Yeah.
Right? Have a 1-year cliff. Right?
Absolutely.
And then vesting over 4 years for sure.
Even if they're your husband.
Even if they're your husband.
We have that. Like everything we do is papered as if we're a venture-backed company.
If they decide to leave in 6 months, then you've not now given up like 20-30% of equity and this person is on your cap table, and it's going to be very, very hard. So think about vesting is a mandatory, no negotiations, 1-year cliff, 4 years vest. Building a startup is a long freaking haul. On average, 7 to 10 years. Why would you not have vesting, right? And then the other thing, I think Alex and I have been 50-50, but he was operations and product and finance, and I was growth and marketing, product management. I think it worked, but you need one person to have the final say, the veto, and Alex was CEO, I was president. It worked in our relationship for a long time. And so it depends on who's doing what. Sometimes you may go down that list and it's genuinely equal, but still have one person have the veto or the buck stop with, or else it's going to be anarchy.
I mean, I think it's so easy to think that before you list out those things, it's so easy to think the work is 50-50.
It's not.
But it's never like that, right? And knowing this, right? Knowing I have more equity, I'm the CEO and I'm more willing to take the sacrifices. Our company has been incorporated for almost 5 years. We've been revenue generating for 3.5 years. I only started paying myself 4 months ago. Everyone else on my team, even if they took a pay cut, has gotten paid. And I'm willing to do that because I have more equity.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to reread the list or keep it for the show notes in case you're at loggerheads and you can't and you want to point it out. But like vision, idea, who's going to sell, who's going to market it, who's going to product manage, who's going to product develop, doing the recruiting, operations, finance, fundraising. Are you writing a check on your own? And which founder if they leave, all the traction will come to a halt, and which founder, if they leave, product development would stop. Ask yourself those questions. And if you want to point it out, 10 each, that might get you somewhere, but have some rubric rather than throwing guesses on the wall, because you don't want resentment. I'm doing more, I'm doing less. And that brings us to our next question, actually. This one, let's just call her Solo Sally.
You're much more creative than me.
I'm doing way more than my co-founder, and it's starting to breed resentment. How do I deal with this?
That was me. Did I write this?
Maybe. I think you sent me a DM from an anonymous account.
I mean, okay. This is a situation, let's assume that Solo Sally had already done the shareholders agreement.
Yeah.
So in this scenario, the equity split is done. And this person now feels like, she's doing more. I feel like I've heard this so many times. What do you think?
It also is phase dependent. That's why you got to write down and clearly delineate roles and responsibilities, right? Those are all the functions we talked about in the previous DM that a startup needs to do through scale. Now, if a founder is not pulling their weight, you can point to this conversation, right? And building a company is a team effort. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with a team. And so it's really, really important to divide roles and responsibilities, expectations, goals, and have clear timelines. This is not a family discussion, right? It's not like if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I don't care. If you're friends, couples, besties, drinking partners, divide the roles, responsibilities, goals, timelines, outcomes, expectations, and have check-in calls every week. We're great friends, right? And we've known each other for the longest time. But when we decided to start this podcast, we are doing weekly check-ins. We have clear delineation of goals and timelines and responsibilities. And when I was slacking off, you gave me shit. And I'm like, dude, I respect you for it. So I think that is very important. What happens is if you don't attack the problem early on, and A lot of us don't. In marriages, in any relationship, right? Something frustrates you,
Yeah.
but you don't attack the problem. You let it slide, you let it slide. If you don't attack the problem early on, it eventually festers and becomes about the person. So if you want to avoid hating the person eventually, jump on it and attack the problem to begin with.
I mean, I would say that clear and honest communication
Yeah.
in any relationship is the solution, because we make so many assumptions about other people, right? Like a lot of times I don't know what David's doing, right? Or he doesn't know what I'm doing. And sometimes I know I'll say something or he'll say something that makes each other feel underappreciated because we don't understand the work.
Yeah.
That is not our expertise. So maybe sometimes the resentment is justified, maybe it's not, but having that conversation helps a lot. And you're going to be with this co-founder for the duration of your company. So you should have that conversation now. But also, like, sometimes, and what I did in the past is just kind of came to terms with it. It kind of is what it is, right? This is our company. And even though there were things that I would have done differently, like, we were an amazing partnership. For the duration of, the time that we were working together, I could trust him 100%. He had integrity. I knew he wouldn't leave me. Those are also worth a lot, right? I'm not a product person. We weren't doing super well. But when we weren't doing super well, he stuck by my side.
And that is worth its weight in gold. And that's why it's really, really important when you start something. Think about it. This thing is going to eventually turn into more than just the two of you or three of you. Great companies are built in great alignment around your purpose, your vision, your mission, and most importantly, your values. And you got to write that down. It sounds so stupid. Oh, like, who does it? It's so fluffy. But write down the values that you care about. If you want transparency, then you got to communicate with transparency and get alignment and write it down. And then every week when you have a conversation in those check-ins, you are asking for transparency and you expect everyone to behave the same way, and you are communicating in that way. You're leading the way. And if you see anything fall through the cracks, right? The weekly check-in is so important. Sometimes in startups, you're talking, not sometimes, all the time. You're in each other's faces daily, so you know what's going on, but still have that weekly formal check-in. So these are the goals, these are the timelines. This is the rubric for communication, so you don't get offended. What happens is, if you take out the emotion of it and said, this is, when we started, we said, this is how we're going to communicate. This is the rubric. This is one of our values. So why are you getting offended if I'm pushing you into a corner? I think things turn out well. And, sometimes maybe you have to part ways, but at least it's not for the wrong reasons. It's like we tried to act according to our values, but one of us just can't. It's not something we want to do, and we're going to move on, right? Ego kills more relationships than anything else.
Yeah. All right. Shall we get to keep the train moving?
Yeah, let's do it.
Next one is a friend of mine. So I want to read this one. Let's call him Exodus Evan. I'm copying you. 3 out of our 5 founders want to move on to other things. Everyone has equity. How do I handle this? One of my friends once told me, I thought it was super funny. Like, he has 2 other co-founders, and he says 3 co-founders is 1.5 too many. I think we've all been in that similar position. But when he started this company, I was already like 5 co-founders. Okay, that's a lot. But the challenge, I think, right now, because I know a bit of background about this company, is 3 people want to leave. They're all vested. The company's not doing super well. They have a bit more runway left, like a year runway left, but they kind of just want to do other things. So, but they don't have cash to buy that equity. And of course, maybe everyone feels like their equity is worth a little more than what the company's able to pay. What would you do?
This is a hard one because, while not co-founder, I was on the founding team of this VC incubated company called Speakeasy, right? And I was promised that, you're part of the extended founding team. And at the end of that run, I think we blew through 6 million. The CTO and some of the key people wanted to leave because it just felt like it was going nowhere and we'd tried everything. And they just felt at loggerheads with the CEO who wasn't putting as much work, right? You had a CEO who wouldn't spend much time talking to customers. He wouldn't product manage. I was like, I'm talking to customers. I'm figuring out what to build. I'm also selling it. I'm getting even feedback. So why are you the CEO? And the CEO it was a big company guy who was, I think, really high up at an enterprise and was the co-founder CEO. And his style was once a week, we do a check-in, put stuff in PowerPoint slides and threatened to fire us, the CTO, me, other people. And eventually people started leaving and they were mentally checked out. So you got to ask yourself, is it you or is it really them? The other thing is you got to ask, are you delaying the inevitable? Time is your biggest asset, right? Everyone can be working on other things. If this thing is not growing at all or marginally growing, what's my opportunity cost of working on this over something else or getting a job somewhere or spending time with my family, whatever it is? What is my opportunity cost here? And so you got to ask yourself, is it not a product market fit? Is it running out of money? A lot of founders, this is a lie that founders tell a lot. Oh, everything is great. It's a great product. It's a great vision. If I only had this much more money. It's like those drug addicts, right? This is my last drag and then I'll stop. It's exactly like that.
Yeah. I mean, I know in this situation that the CEO wants to keep going.
Yeah.
And that's tough, right? Because the CEO has a vision. Like the CEO sees the whole vision and 3 other people don't. There's investors involved. Not a lot, but there's investors involved. I think what I would do, I would just remove the emotional, I would do the practical thing. I would get a 409A done. Like just because the company doesn't have a ton of traction. You're not going to buy back those shares at what you raised, right? Like
how long was this company around?
I think a couple years.
Yeah,
they don't have a lot of customers. They don't have a lot of revenue. So I would just get an official evaluation done. And I would buy back the equity with that valuation because I know that it won't be very high.
100%. Or maybe it's not enough. Like if they had vesting clauses, then they wouldn't have vested if it's a couple years out of 4 years.
Yeah. But that's fair, right?
Yeah.
You get a third party to value it and that's fair.
Yeah, buy them out. But honestly, I feel bad more for the CEO because sometimes the CEO believes in the vision. But if a couple of years you can't get any traction, are you lying to yourself? It's a lie that founders tell themselves, right? Just enough money, just enough time. It never works out. I'm gonna stop eating. This is my last cookie, like I do, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have empathy for that because I've been in that position. And I just kept going and kept pushing. But I was in personal debt. So if I had shut that down, I would be like $400,000 in my own debt.
Definitely.
And there's no job I could get to pay that back.
So you have to turn
So I had to keep going.
But this with investors' money, and sometimes investors will tell you, I still remember I was working at another startup, although on the exec team there, and exec teams means nothing in a startup, right? You're just working directly with a founder. I think one investor came and said, you guys have tried, and it just looks like 4 monkeys trying to fuck a football. Lots of action and nothing's getting done. Just like wrap it up and move on. I think that stayed with me for a long time. It's like you're trying a lot of things. It's not working. But let's move on to the next one here. The quest for a technical co-founder. Let's call him Technical Tim. I'm starting a company, but both my co-founder and I are not technical. We're looking for a technical co-founder. How do I find one? And how much equity should I offer? You're an expert at this because you're an expert, I think, at try before you buy, contractors.
Yeah.
I don't know, conning contractors into becoming a co-founders. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's actually one from a friend of mine that I got recently. And my answer to this person was my answer to anybody is equity is like toothpaste.
Yeah.
Once you squeeze it out of the tube, you can't get it back in. If you don't know the person, do not give them equity. Like my default is no. Don't give them equity, right? Like you don't even know who you're first of all, you're not technical, so you can't evaluate them.
And always vesting and paying with cash is cheaper than paying with equity.
Oh yeah, always pay with cash. And that's actually my next suggestion is find a contractor. Find someone who might want to work evenings and weekends, find a dev shop, like find someone who you can pay to build the first version. If it works out, then grow that. But don't give equity for the sake of giving equity. Pay with money. Because if you think in a few years, my company is going to sell for $3 million, right? Just do the math.
Yeah.
Just do the math. Are you willing to give 20% of $3 million today or just pay like 30 grand?
100%. I agree 100%. Now, tied to this is how do I find a co-founder, right? And you've outlined a really good process in that. Talk to contractors that you can work with. You build a relationship with them. It's a best way to know a working relationship with somebody is one, work with them on a tight timeline with a specific goal and everything comes out, right? Like a tight timeline crunch gives you all the stresses, tells you about their personality, how they react, and do a few projects like that. A lot of people I talk to, they're like, oh, he's my buddy. And my buddy was a CTO or VP Eng or developer at XYZ company. You don't even know what stack they're developing in. You don't know that space. So you just think, okay, let me make this person my CTO, my co-founder. And the next thing you know, they're not that good, good because they're just like doing assembly line code at a larger company. I think before you go through your buddies, unless your buddy is a really good coder and you've seen them, find a contractor or find somebody in your network that you can work with on this project, right? And on a tight timeline, maybe produce an MVP or some version. And today with like low code, no code, generative AI, it's so much easier. There are frameworks out there that you can just download and pay for and use, right? And even if you have a buddy, I would recommend before you embark on this journey with your buddy, maybe enroll in a hackathon over a weekend where you have to produce an MVP for something in 3 days and see how you work together. You might just hate each other and want to kill each other.
Well, later.com came from a hackathon with the 4 founders. And also like 2 of my co-founders were both contractors for me before they became a co-founder. So it is the only way to see if you have the same passion and value alignment and just work ethics.
Specific goal, tight timeline is magic when 2 people work together. It tells you everything about each other.
All right, next one. My co-founder and I can't seem to agree on the direction of our company. I'm all about chasing the big dreams and they're stuck in the weeds. Close to that one is I'm all in on my startup, but my co-founder's playing it safe. How do we find common ground when it comes to risk tolerance and commitment level? I mean, we touched on this a little bit, right? On who's doing more and things like that. It's kind of along the same vein.
I think this is a little different in that what happens is in the early days, you're moving fast, right? Everything is high risk. There comes a point in a company where you have to transition from a pirate to an AV, right? And I feel here where one founder has to still play the founder and the other founder has to play the CEO. And what that means is the job of a CEO eventually at scale at like 5, 6, 7 million in revenue is to stabilize the business. That's what professional company CEOs do, is like not run out of money, make sure employees are happy, make sure customers are happy. But what keeps a company growing fast is taking on new risk, taking on new pain, right? Like it's like going to the gym. You add heavier weights, you grow. I feel like sometimes that founder and CEO title eventually at scale, because I saw that myself, becomes at loggerheads with each other. Should we stabilize the company or should we take new risk? And I feel like one of these founders should just relegate to a more founder type role where they say like skunkworks team, right? So if you look at the stages of a company, first you validate the idea. Then you get to product market fit. Product market fit is you have high retention, customers using a product. Then you get to a point of product channel fit. You have one way or predominantly one channel that's firing. And by that point, you're like one customer coming through one channel for one product. Now you're at scale. The scale CEO's job is to put fuel on the fire. 75% of the time, just keep growing this base, right? Coin operated, manage those coin operated people who like put 1, turn into 5. But what's going to explode your business is that next product, that next market. Now look at HubSpot and look at Salesforce, right? At least in SaaS, they all have multiple products. And Salesforce, their second product does more revenue than the first product. And so your job as a founder is to go on that quest and have alignment that I'm going to spend 25% of the time without distracting the rest of the company on trying to figure out either a new product or a new market or a new channel that's going to explode our trajectory, add new risk in the company and separate that. You can't distract the rest of the team to do that. That was my job, by the way, at Boast as president. My job was to inject new risk in the business, new markets, new products, new channels. And Alex didn't bother me. I had full leeway as long as I didn't distract the rest of the team. Basecamp does that too.
I mean, I agree, but I also don't know, I don't have any background on this company, right? But I can tell a story where a friend of mine has been running this startup for 10 years and his co-founder, CTO, like they're profitable. They've gone through hell and back. They've been doing this for a long time. The co-founder is just tired. Like he's bored and he has pretty significant equity, but they're at the point now where it's not worth it to force this person to keep going because it's there. You don't want to be the person to hold the other person back either, right?
So you leave and replace yourself.
Yeah. So they're actually working out a plan where, they can, phase him out. And he's had massive impact on the company already.
Yeah.
So they're phasing him out. They're finding someone to replace him over time. And now there's an actual plan for that. So I think for later stage companies, that's always an option. But yeah, I mean, if it's 10 years, like you can also empathize with that.
Totally, right? And that's what, I mean, me and Alex transitioned out. We made way for the Navy. We were the pirates. We got some scars, but we also got some cash. So we made way and we're active board members. But I think that is always going to be a point as you scale is like vision and risk, injecting risk versus stabilizing the business. The next few actually have sort of similar themes. So let's just take them together. We keep stepping on each other's diverged toes. How do we fix this? Or, my co-founder and I speak different languages when it comes to communication and working styles. How do we find common ground? And the other one is my co-founder and I are butting heads over personal issues and conflicts. How do we keep our personal baggage from sinking this ship? And I think these ones are similar in that they're all tied to communication at its core. Now, before I get in, I'd love your opinion because of two reasons. One, you've got a predominantly remote team, which is very, very hard to manage. We do as well, but and your team is in all kinds of different time zones. And the second thing is an issue that I never had to face with is your co-founder is also your husband. So that makes it twice as challenging as anyone else. So let's get your feedback on it.
I mean, I think the misconception is that it's twice as challenging. But the reality, at least in my situation, is it's twice as easy because David is my best friend. Like, he's awesome. And that's why we're partners in life. He just happens to also be my partner in crime for my startup. And I think I really lucked out on that, right? But in the beginning, when we started working together, the number one thing we fought about was miscommunication, right? Before, we were communicating as family, and then we had to communicate as coworkers. And that's not the same, right? The things that you say to your wife is not going to be how you communicate with Alex. You don't think when you speak to your wife.
Yeah.
Same thing, right? So in the beginning, there was a lot of like people, like each one of us taking each other too personally. Like if it's like, oh, this feature doesn't work. Oh, does that mean I'm a bad coder? That's just an example, right? But all of the things that you mentioned is just honest communication and not assuming the other person knows. Like once my friend gave me relationship advice that I apply to everything is it's never too obvious.
It's never too obvious. In all fairness, our wives, Alex and our wives joke that we're like a married couple. We're partners in every project since university, and he's my daughter's godfather. I'm his daughter's godfather. We've said the stupidest shit to each other, and then we've reconciled and gone and partied without even talking about reconciling. But I think at the heart of this, and as with the first conversation around the no documentation with the boyfriend, you gotta start every business with an alignment around vision, mission, purpose, and values. Like, how are we going to, what is the rubric of communicating? And then remind each other when you do check-ins that, hey, you know what? This is one of our values. If respect for all and transparency and trust, you gotta remind yourself. I know it's very hard, but try doing that for 6 months and it becomes practice, right? The other thing you gotta remember is no personal attacks. And it gets personal when you don't attack the problem early on. We both have friends where it's like you want to say something, but you feel obligated and you never say those things. And then eventually you start resenting and hating the person. And if you go back to all those situations and ask yourself, if I sat with this person and we just attacked the problem at hand, maybe I wouldn't have been hating the person.
I mean, I think you bring up a really good point about, vision and mission. Like the first thing that David saw me do when I started eWebinar was go at lengths about wanting to build a lifestyle business.
Yeah.
And just wanting something to pay for our life. That's it. Like that is the definition of what I wanted to build. And he was fully aligned with that. So not once would he be like, well, why don't you go and raise money? Why don't we grow faster? Why don't we do this? Like it just never comes up. So in the beginning, you already have to have that. But I think sometimes a lot of these conflicts happen because you're so in the weeds that you forget that everyone is going for the same goal.
When it becomes about the I and not we, and that's why I think one of the hacks I learned in relationship is always speak as we and always speak in terms of experiences and could we. And one thing that always gets me and causes fights, I've analyzed, you always do this. You always do that. Don't use extreme words, because that frustrates the other person.
Yeah. And actually, sometimes like when myself, David, and Todd, who's our CRO, are having like heated debates about what to put in the product, I'm like, guys, like we all want the best for the product. Why are we screaming at each other? And that's one of those things that you got to like zoom out with your co-founder or your team and be like, we are on the same team, right? We're speaking the same language. We want the best for this company. So let's find a way to communicate and diffuse this.
100%. Now, the next one is my co-founder and I are at odds over who should be the CEO of our startup. How do we settle this debate? And I think we talked about some of this in role delineation in the first conversation around equity split.
Yeah.
But let's get some of your thoughts on it.
I mean, I want to say the solution to this, like who's going to be CEO, is very much the same as how do I split equity, right? Like you list out all the roles. Take the exact same list. Now it's not about equity, right? Like you can't tell me that both people are going to build relationships with VCs or investors and customers and partners, and one person is going to do more front-facing things than the other. And I believe, having been CEO of 3 companies, the CEO is the chief evangelist for the company. And whoever's going to do that and do more of the things like recruiting and keeping money in the bank and do the things that
Getting up on stage, talking to investors.
Yeah, the things that keep the company running. Like if this person goes tomorrow, the company could die. That person should be the CEO.
And sometimes it's not cut and dry, but a finance expertise you can backfill, especially at scale. CTO expertise you can backfill because at scale you have developers that need to be managed. The CTO is not writing the code. What you can backfill is a person with customer relationships, who gets on planes, trains, and automobiles, who has media relationships, who has investor relationships. Ultimately, the leading indicator of your company's success is, are customers happy, are employees happy, and there's money in the bank. Whose chances of those things, who causes those things to tank if they leave more?
I like that. The next one is something that I dealt with as well about burnout. The stress of running a business is taking its toll on my co-founder and myself. How do we navigate these pressures and challenges without cracking? So I want to tell you a story, quick story. My co-founder and I, in our last startup, we couldn't find product market fit for like 2 years, 3 years. And we kept going and we were spending all the savings and we got a huge loan under my name. And like, it was just, we did not feel success for too long. And he came to me and he said, I don't want to leave you, but would it be okay if I start looking at some side projects because I'm not having fun anymore? And as a CEO, you're like, shit, my CTO is not having fun anymore. I'm $400,000 in debt. What am I going to do? But you don't want to hold him back. So at that point, I'm like, okay, like let's talk through this. It was like a strategy that a friend of mine had taught me is what's the worst that can happen. So I was like, okay, if we stop today, what would you do tomorrow? He's like, well, I would get a job at Amazon or Facebook. I'm like, okay, how much would you get paid? He's like, I don't know, like 140. I'm like, okay, so at our worst case scenario, you would get paid more than double what you're getting paid today. He's like, yeah. I'm like, but how would you feel if we shut down tomorrow? And he's like, I guess I would always wonder if there's another door we didn't go through. And that became how we made every decision when we felt burnt out on whether we would keep going. And the thing is, it's not reasonable, but neither is starting a company. So I think it's easy, again, when you get in the weeds, to just focus on those things that you're doing and you're so exhausted. But the fear of regret sometimes is enough fuel to kind of get you out of that rut. What do you think?
The fear of regret is a lot of fuel, a lot of the times, right? Man, you're just a masterful communicator, and I think that's why we bond, right? It's our early experience in sales, right? These are the things
we always selling. That was a sales tactic.
These are the things we would say in like enterprise deals, right? What if, and like help them see the outcome, and then basically
like
say, I want it, right? Like a therapist. But the other thing is we feel burnout sometimes because we lose purpose, or we feel we've given up too much of our life, right? There's no such thing as work-life balance in a startup. So you got to integrate your work and your life, and don't put off the things that bring you joy. Maybe, and I'm a big proponent of this, when you wake up, go and work out. Exercise releases endorphins in your brains that calms the feeling of stress. And working out is one place where you can feel you're winning every day. You may be losing in business every day. Grab your business partner and go working out together, train together, right? You get stronger together in the gym. I guarantee you will get stronger together in life. Do stuff together that bring you joy daily. It's not about like Rome wasn't built in a day. The only way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. If you try to address burnout when you feel it, it's likely you're at the end of the rope. Prioritize little by little. Going for a workout like an hour and a half, including commute and everything a day, your business is not going to come to an end. Do that first thing in the morning. In the morning when you wake up. Maybe go to a spa once a week. Just do those things, and those things are not expensive. Go to a cheap gym with a sauna or walk outside. Prioritize wellness as a part of your co-founding relationship.
Absolutely. The next one is one that I don't have experience with. So I'm going to have to ask you what your feedback is. When our company got featured in the press, one co-founder hogged all the limelight while the rest of us were left in the shadows. It felt like a betrayal. How do we deal with this?
This is a hard one, right? And again, clear delineation of roles and responsibilities and who does what solves it. Here's the thing, man. The media, wants to speak to the one that has the style and the pizzazz and that can evangelize. Not all co-founders can evangelize. The media wants to interview the person and talk to the person that can wow them, and that will cause them to lean in. You got to view this as the company is winning. It's not an individual gain. You're doing it for the company. And so I think you need to have this delineation of roles. Be happy that one person is lifting the way for our company. Now, a lot of the times, for the most, that was me at Boast. And Alex has has been always very understanding. But, sometimes an interview comes out and we're so busy, I didn't even have a chance to say. And I may have said something that got misconstrued and written a different way. I think communication is key. You got to inform. And you got to always give the shout outs where they belong. Like, we did this together. This was our journey. A lot of founders, what they do is they make this silly mistake of not writing anything down or having a press kit. They go to the interview unprepared. Have a speaker document. This is the company's background. This is how we founding story, 10x story, growth story, vision story. Have it all tied with pictures and press articles. Build a press list. Read that enough times. So when you go, it's the same canned founding story. It's the vision. It's the team praise. Like your pitch deck. Have the PR pitch deck. We did that. And then it becomes calm because people know, okay, and you share that with the whole founding team that this is what I'm going to talk to, but it just so happens they want to interview one person. And that's how it would be. But everyone will get the shout outs, have the canned photo, and make peace with it, right?
Actually, there's a scene in this movie, Gran Turismo, which is a new movie, where one guy won, but then the guy who won wasn't as camera ready as the second guy. So then the marketing guy wanted to pick the second guy. So that was an actual scene. But what you're talking about is true. But definitely communicating it, don't hold the resentment, and just get it out there. And you're all on the same team.
99% of co-founder issues are solved with clear delineation of roles, alignment around values, and how does that happen? Through communication. When you have the standard PR doc that this is what we're going to talk about, these are the talking points, the background and how we came together, what the future and the growth looks like, the vision and where it's going, and photos and key press articles, everyone knows, right? That you're not going to say anything out of whack.
Yeah.
And you even what's one hack I'll tell you? So I have the speaker doc and I think I'm going to make it public for everyone. It's got the background and the story and key themes I talk about. I even put questions for all the podcasters. So to make my book a bestseller, I appeared on 100 podcasts. Melissa and I share a list and we keep adding to that list and we keep hitting them up. But nonetheless, I did 100 or so podcast interviews in 8 weeks and I begged them all to launch it at the week of the book launch. You know why that process was easy? Because I had a doc that I sent to all of them and there were canned questions around different themes. So you're not going to get anything out of whack. The only way to win is to be prepared.
Yeah. Absolutely. The next one, my technical co-founder and I are bickering over who's more essential to the company. Feels like an unnecessary power struggle. How do we resolve this gracefully? I feel like we've addressed this like a couple times, right? Like, again, open communication, list out all your roles, and don't assume the other person isn't doing as much as you. Like, just share more. I think openly share more. I think everybody feels underappreciated.
I have this framework that I write about in the book called CAMPER, which is connection, autonomy, mastery, purpose, energy, and recognition. You may have the connection and give people autonomy and mastery, meaning they're learning to get better and better at what they do. There's a great sense of purpose beyond money, and you energize everyone through constant communication. But if people don't feel recognized for anything small or big, they feel like a robot. Everyone needs appreciation. Go home today when you listen to this and appreciate your spouse or your partner just randomly without them expecting, or buy them something. They'll reciprocate. When you push against somebody, they push back. When you ignore somebody, they feel lost. When you appreciate somebody, they feel loved and they give you love back. So I think this stems from, we get so busy in the business and we forget to say thank you.
Yeah.
Start the day by working out and end the day by saying thank you.
I love that. Every relationship is like that. Next one of my co-founders is a control freak who hoards all the information and makes decisions without consulting the rest of us. How do we change this behavior? That's tough, right?
That is tough. And I think, again, alignment on values and constant communication. In a startup, you can't hide. So the fact that they're hoarding means it's so obvious. Attack the problem early on. Ask them straight up, like, everyone's open. Do a weekly check-in, whether or not you're in each other's faces. You may be in a conference room this small and in each other's faces, but have a daily stand-up or a weekly stand-up, although you know everything. Discuss the goal and the outcome and the timeline, how you're tracking. The leading indicators, a lot of people don't talk about the leading indicators of the business, and some of them are soft, like communication and things like that nature. And the lagging indicators. The lagging indicators always, the ENPS score and the customer NPS score. Well, if the customer is not using your product, you could have known that 3 months ago. You didn't have to send a survey. If the employee is giving you a crappy ENPS score, but you don't talk to them, leave them secluded, don't offer them any help, you can just see it on their face across the room. Why do you need to send a survey 3 months ago? So understand the leading indicators of your team. Everything has a leading indicator, and call it out in the meeting that hey, it feels like you're not openly discussing this topic. Is there a reason? Like, I'm sharing everything and our relationship is built on trust. What is causing you to not feel the same trust towards us? Did we put it on you?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but did we do anything?
Again, sales.
Did we do anything to earn your mistrust?
Yeah.
And just shut up.
Yeah. This last one, which is also something I've seen a lot of friends had to deal with. My co-founder seems to have one foot out the door, taking side gigs, which takes time away from our company. I'm all in, but it doesn't seem like he is. I've seen...
But you had the situation that you described.
Yeah, but then he didn't take side gigs because I had that conversation beforehand. But I've seen, especially CTOs of co-founders, where usually the company doesn't have a lot of traction or has been working on it for years and not seeing a lot of success. And CTOs get recruited all the time, right? More money, more money, funded startups, Amazon, you name it. And I've seen companies shut down because of this.
Especially at the early stages. I think once you're at revenue and scale and you have developers and a framework to deliver working software with speed.
Revenue solves everything. Success solves everything.
Get
right?
traction.
But it's a reality for companies where people aren't feeling success, right?
At Speakeasy, the founding CTO wanted to leave. I wanted to leave. The company shut down, right? And I think here's the reality. Everyone has an opportunity cost that they're dealing with.
Yeah.
They're taking a pay cut or not taking any money at all to feed their family. It's a business decision. Right by your employees, right by your customers, right by your shareholders. Co-founder is a shareholder and an employee, right? And so you got to ask yourself the question, am I just so punch drunk blind in the love for this vision that I'm not seeing the inevitable? I like to time box everything. Validation, talk to 100 customers. That's the leading indicator, 200 customers. Lagging indicator or goal, get 4 or 5 paying customers for B2B SaaS. Product market fit, and that may be 6 months, okay? 6, 8 months. Product market fit may take you 18 months, 2 years. And that is, do customers not leave me? And are they using the product? Are they completing the core action of the product? If they don't do this core action over and over again, the product will fail. There's no use of them using the product. So basically, you want to convert all your dormant users to engaged users. Then go to market fit. Do I have pull from one channel where it can be eventually coin operated? And you have these conversations and you look at the leading indicators and the lagging indicators. If you spend 5 years and you don't have product market fit, or 4 years, it's always easy to say, give me more time, but it's never time or it's money, right? Like you say, people just chase money to eventually say they're going to retire. But what does retirement mean? The same thing. What does more time or money mean? Like, what specific actions you're going to take that's going to get you revenue and engagement in your product? And if you're not clear, then you've not clearly communicated that plan with anyone. That means you're just like kicking the can down the road.
I mean, I think passion is hard to get back after you lose it, honestly. Yeah. And if it's an early company, maybe that's not a great co-founder. Like you gotta nip that in the bud, right? If you've been running for 10 years, like my friend, figure out a plan for them to go somewhere else. If you can buy them out, but you can't beat passion into someone. If someone wants to leave you, especially in the early days, you got to do something else.
You got to do something else and you got to find a replacement, especially if it's so early that you've not even got to product market fit, but you've also not stretched 3 years to get to product market fit, meaning you feel the passion, right? Sometimes you'll spend 3 years and not get to product market fit and feel like, oh, you know what? I'm just forcing this passion. Yeah. But at the end of it, when passion meets profession, you become Michael Jackson. I truly, truly believe that.
Yeah. And revenue solves everything. So Lloyd, what is your hot take from today's conversation?
My hot take is communication is at the root of everything. And it's funny. I'm an engineer. When I finished engineering, the first job I took was cold calling for a founder. My parents lost it. They're like, dude, your friends are working at Johnson & Johnson and Microsoft. What are you doing? And somebody told me once, everything you do as a founder is communication. Convincing your wife you're not going to bring money home, convincing customers to buy a product that doesn't exist, employees to work on no pay, investors, etc., media. And the job of a leader is to communicate, to inspire and motivate and excite people, not to inform, because if you want to inform people, just send a memo via email. Your job of a leader is to inspire, motivate, and energize people, because people who are inspired, motivated, and energized can move mountains. And that's not a one and done activity. You got to do it day in, day out, from even when you have this idea forming in your head. So communication is the root of everything.
So I have 2 hot takes because I can't choose one. One is paper everything.
100%.
And the second is nothing is too obvious.
Nothing is ever too obvious, and nothing is ever as bad or as good as it may seem. You psych yourself out.
Absolutely. And that's it for today's episode.